Hi, and thank you for listening to One Mind Dharma's Dharma Talk. You can now check out our brand new app that was completely made by Matthew. And you can look at meditations, podcasts, and connect with others. You can listen to this podcast right on the app. And you can find that at oneminddharma.com/app.
And 2 gold stars for you if you're listening on the app right now.
You get a smiley face next to your name. Please also give us a review on social media or on this podcast, and share this podcast on any social media as well. Just a few more things that we wanted to mention. We have the Practice for 2 course, our second round of it. Registration is open. You can find that at oneminddharma.com/2. It's a great thing to deepen your practice with another person. Doesn't necessarily need to be a romantic partner. It could be a friend or a parent or anything like that. And finally, I wanted to mention that we now have a live group on Thursday nights, and it's live streaming on Facebook. You can check that out and find out more information at oneminddharma.com/live. So, Matthew...
Shameless self-promotion.
Shameless.
Yeah.
Matthew has our topic for us today, and I will let him introduce it and take it away.
So, I hesitate to jump right into the word that kind of comes to mind, but I thought I would talk about just this kind of balance in our practice and in our lives of tending to overanalyze things or overthink things or try to figure everything out. And that there's a piece of the path where that's valuable. Really just kind of basic general example would be, it's good to know when I do this, it causes suffering. So it's good to kind of analyze, but there's a piece of the path, the practice, and in daily life where perhaps the most skillful thing we can do is just tune into experience and really be with it as it is without adding in that extra layer. And to me, that is entangled a lot with faith. And I know everyone has a different relationship to the word faith. Yeah, yours is one that's like that. It's funny because my relationship to it's like that, but because of that, I love talking about it, because sometimes I talk about it and I can see people kind of like squirming in their seats a little bit, because some people just don't like that word. A lot of people that come to meditation practice have that association of like blind faith and just believe it because I told you. And there's that famous sutta, the Kalama Sutta, where the Buddha says like, don't believe something because I told you. Take what you hear or what you observe or what you read or the teachings and see what you observe and what falls in line with it. So I'm not talking about blind faith, but I do think that there's a piece that sometimes that analytical mind and the trying to figure out can be a form of doubt and not trusting. And maybe perhaps a better word than...
I like trust better.
Trust or confidence. I heard, Brian Lesage says you can substitute trust or confidence for faith, because I do have confidence in the Dharma.
Yeah.
And I do trust in it as well. But this piece that, especially with the body, this practice kind of came about through some work with Tara Brach and trauma and looking at what's going on in the body. But I think it's applicable across the board that so often we have an experience, whether it is a thought or something in the body or an emotion or whatever it is, and we try to figure out what caused it, what's going to make it better, what can we do about it. And maybe it's not necessarily the figuring out mind, like what can I do to fix it? But sometimes it's like the judgment or the blame or the mind goes around these things. We get these add-ons. And again, I think that can be useful in some sense, like in some instances that can be really skillful and help us. But on the other hand, we can really try to be present with what is happening. And the piece where faith comes in is to trust wisdom. And that sounds horrible coming out of my own mouth. I don't think I would love hearing that when I was new to practice. But this piece that as we tune into how anxiety feels and are really just with it, it's not just trusting some kind of arcane sense of like religious wisdom that's already within you. I mean, I do think that we're trusting something that's already within us. But from like a psychological standpoint, even we're habituating ourselves to it in a way. Like we don't when we experience anxiety and we react, by trying to figure it out and getting frantic and kind of building upon it, it makes the body more anxious and more energy and more stimulation. Whereas when we really just sit with it, we can actually train a new response. So it seems a little passive. And I know I'm analytically describing how to not overanalyze. So it can seem passive, but it's not. It really is proactive, I think. And so as we sit with these experiences, we're really able to not react so poorly. And specifically with trauma or with any kind of activation, we're training the mind to see that we're safe in that moment. That often that's what's happening is the mind or body thinks we're unsafe, some kind of biological response. And as we're with it, we begin to see that like we're okay. I think is it Noah that tells that story, or Jordan Kramer tells
Jordan
that
Kramer,
story
yeah.
of having an anxiety, some severe anxiety, and calling his teacher Noah. And Noah said, "Why don't you just sit with that right now and see if you're the first kid to die of anxiety sitting there in meditation," which is, a little harsh and Noah-y. But a good teaching there of like just sit with it and see that you're okay,
Yeah.
even if it feels horrible.
It's not going to kill you.
Like retrain the mind to see, yeah, it's not going to kill you. See if you can be okay with it.
Yeah, for me, one thing that really comes up, I don't want to take this too broad, but even if you do take it a little bit more broad, the confidence or faith in practice, in meditation, that it will eventually bring about some change. And I see this all the time with students of ours, where they get the like, when will it start working, and trying to figure it out, and why does this work?
You had that student who would be like, "Why isn't this working?"
No, she would be like,
hilarious.
When will this work? When will this work? Every time. And I would be like, I wish I had an answer for you. Trust me, if
Tomorrow,
I had one, I would tell you. And I was going to say, I feel really lucky. I would certainly consider myself a skeptic, definitely an empiricist. And I...
Wow.
What?
You get gold stars for using the word empiricist so casually and flawlessly. That like just fit right in. Good job.
Thank you. But I think that's really true to who I am.
Yeah.
I love science. So when I came to practice, unlike most things in my life that I approached immediately questioning, I came immediately trusting, because I saw it working so quickly. And because I don't think I've ever had another experience where I've sat and listened to teachings and listened to the Dharma. I don't think I've had a similar experience where it just all rang so true to my experience, to the experience I've already had. So for me, there's a confidence in like not being overly skeptical and like allowing myself to trust the wisdom that's already laid out or being talked about by other people, trusting other people's experience, and then trusting my own experience with practice as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't shake the thought that you're an empiricist, but also an idealist a little bit, and how conflicting those are. It's beautiful. I love it.
Because it's my empirical experience that the world is mostly a good place.
There you go. I think there's a healthy amount, like something you're pointing towards that like I hear is there's a healthy amount of skepticism.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that we should walk around, paranoid necessarily of everything and everyone and every experience, but I do think that, the Buddha pointed towards some skepticism, and I think skepticism has like a negative connotation. Perhaps the word like questioning, or
even like discernment,
like some wise judgment.
Yeah.
To me, something that goes with skepticism is curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is a little bit of like, is this true? Not in a like, I think it's not. Like often skepticism is used in a way of like, oh, I think that's not true, but rather, is this true? And I agree. You hadn't had a like a super regular sitting practice for a month or so, and and you started sitting. I'm like telling a story about you while you're sitting here. It's
That's
weird.
okay.
But from my observation, and then you started sitting just like 5-10 minutes a day, and like 3 days later, you were like, wow, what a difference. And obviously, you had like a strong foundation of practice. And even in that time that you didn't have a daily practice, you were still practicing. It wasn't no meditation or no awareness or anything like that. But it is crazy that at the same time that these practices take time, we do see some, if we tune in, we do see some changes happen. And for me, that builds faith or
Yeah.
confidence or trust.
To really be present with the change that's happening, and to notice the same way you would notice what's going on in the body, to notice what's going on in your practice.
Yeah, and to notice what's working and what's not, and what level of skepticism is beneficial. I think I've told the story a bunch of times that I was on a retreat and I was talking to a teacher, and I don't even think I had awareness over it. And I was telling the teacher something, and he said, "Why, you're always trying to figure everything out. Why don't you just be with experience?" And I said, "Okay, okay, yeah, it's that easy. It's simple but not easy." And I went and I tried to do that, and what I noticed was, wow, all these experiences, sitting meditation, walking meditation, eating, falling asleep at night, I was just trying everything. It was like the response was me trying to figure it out in some shape, way, or form, trying to make it better, trying to just understand it, trying to know exactly what the right response was to it. A sense of perfectionism, actually, I think, now that I say that out loud, was like a sense of like, I'm going to respond the most awake to it, like the most enlightened, most skillful response every time.
Best response.
I'm going to have the most like Buddha-esque response. And what I found when I went back to the teacher was that, and it was through conversation with him, is that for me, it was like a sense of doubt, of not trusting myself. And, you can take that out of like Buddhist psychology terms and into like Western psychology terms. It was like a lack of self-confidence. It didn't come up as like these teachings aren't true, or my teachers this teacher doesn't know anything, which I've had that form of doubt too. But it was a self-doubt. It was a lack of self-confidence in my ability to just be with something. And like we started talking about, my ability to just sit with something unpleasant, or like you were just talking about too, is important. My ability to sit regularly, my ability to grow. Like I had this feeling that like if I don't actively try to grow in my meditation practice, I'm not going to grow. I'm just going to keep sitting still like a statue, and it's not going to help. That there was some sense of like urgency, like I needed to do something. And I think sometimes we can just tune into our experience and see what's going on, and not have to, I don't mean be passive by any means, because that doesn't that just doesn't feel right to me. But I do think we don't need to meddle too much.
Yeah, we don't have to have every answer.
Yeah.
About our own minds, about our own physical experiences. We don't have to be able to answer every question that we have in order to be benefiting from practice.
No, and I think there's some value in recognizing the questions we have,
Absolutely.
even if we don't have an answer. So as far as, what that pragmatically looks like, because a lot of this talk is kind of like a little more theoretical or abstract than concrete. For me, what it really looks like, just to offer some insight into it, is when I notice something going on in the body, if it's an experience of anxiety or anger, I often will just sit with it, and I notice that my mind's like chirping in the background going like, but why? Why are you angry? What led to this? And again, I think that has its place, and it can be useful to recognize that like, oh, when this happens, it activates me in some way. But to really try to sit with it and be with it, we were talking the other day in the car on the way to or from a meditation group, that often in the Buddhist suttas, they use the word know. You should know your suffering. You should know the 5 hindrances. And how the translation there, that we use the word know, actually means like to familiarize yourself with. So to know as in like to be with and to understand and to kind of hold, like you would like hold someone's hand or hold someone's face and look them in the eyes. Not this know like I'm going to know with my head.
Yeah, I'm gonna
If that makes
intellectually
sense.
understand
So for
every
me, that's
aspect
what
of this.
exactly. So for me, that's what I try to do is to like be with it rather than to get the head involved in it. And it makes sense why we get the head involved. It's biological as far as like evolution goes. We want to understand something so we can protect ourselves and stay safe. And it's societal. I mean, there's a heavy emphasis or heavy preference towards understanding and this wisdom,
Absolutely.
and a heavy judgment, I would say, against uh, that more like sentimental, like I'm just gonna feel it. And even if we're relatively aware or awake or socially engaged and active, we can still be susceptible to the way society or the community we were raised in affects us. And what happens is we value this, like I'm gonna understand it, and we need to turn towards just being with whatever's going on. That just disclaimer on that, if you're experiencing like a really intense panic attack or some really activated trauma, of course, the right level of being with it might not be to be with it completely.
Yeah.
That could be even dangerous, I think.
Yeah. So if you were to give us just one sentence on what our listeners should do in order to work with what we've talked about in this podcast, just one sentence.
Oh, can we like pause it so I could think about it and rehearse and make some notes?
Come on. You got this.
One sentence about, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just one sentence for our listeners.
Just buying time.
Especially people who are new to meditation, how they can actually implement this, what we've just talked about, in their practice.
I feel like you should hum the Jeopardy theme song while I think of it, but I don't want to get sued by them, so don't. But anyways, one sentence about how to bring this to your practice. Yes. Try to be with whatever's going on. And when the mind starts analyzing it, notice that the mind's doing that. It really is that simple. Just notice.
Beautiful.
I love that, like just observe, like, there's that like a therapist says, oh, and how does that feel? Or tech support says, did you turn it off and turn it back on? That when you go on a meditation retreat, the teachers always say something along the lines of, oh, like just look at that or just observe that or just be with that. And it's, cheesy, but it's true. That's why they say it so much. I say it all the time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for that topic today.
Absolutely.
So we aren't ending this week with a question because we now have a new podcast.
Nor will we ever end
with a question anymore, because we now have a new podcast just dedicated to us answering questions. We had a lot of interest in that, and people were wanting to hear more of just question and answer. So you can check out that new podcast if you're interested. It's oneminddharma.com/ask. And if you have a question, please feel free to submit one to us.
And we will try to answer. We get quite a few questions. The reason we're starting to plug a bunch of different little things for those of you that aren't aware is Elizabeth and I run One Mind Dharma completely by ourselves. Everything from the social media and the courses and the meditations to the technology aspects and teaching live groups. So I coded that app and I do the website and all that. So we appreciate any of your support with reviewing it on whatever you're listening on, iTunes, or going to YouTube and subscribing, sharing. We appreciate any donations, oneminddharma.com/donate. This is how we make a living, and it is our little grassroots project. And I just want to name it that we've started kind of plugging more things than we used to. And, One Mind Dharma is almost 6 years old, and it's really taken off into a beautiful community of people and relationships. And we're grateful. And we appreciate all of your support and patience as we shamelessly plug ourselves, throwing it out there. We're excited about what we do, though.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.